Nintendo just held their latest Indie World presentation, where we learn about new games from smaller companies coming to the Nintendo Switch. After the last third-party direct, which really didn't have anything for me in it, I didn't have many expectations going into this event. However, I was surprised at just how good this presentation was, with an interesting mix of games, including games I'm now having to buy today. So let's talk about the games from this event and what I liked. What's going on, guys? I'm RGT85. If this is your first time on the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. But without any further ado, let's talk about the Indie World Showcase and some of the games from it. So the first game they started out with was a game called Hades, which is a roguelike dungeon crawler, because evidently we need more of those types of games, and it looked pretty decent, but honestly, I'm just sort of past this genre of games. I do like the art style that they used in this game. They used like a comic book intro as well for it, and I thought the gameplay itself looked pretty solid, but like I said, I'm just sort of over these games. Now, this is originally a game that is available on Steam, and you can actually do cross saves with this game on your Nintendo Switch, so that's definitely a good thing if you have been playing this game on your PC. Hades is coming to the Nintendo Switch in fall of 2020, and like I said, not really a genre for me anymore, but I think fans of the genre will enjoy this style of game. Next up was a game called Hypnospace Outlaw, and it's a game in which you search the internet in the 90s. And the internet in the 90s was definitely a very different place than it is in 2020, and I think they did a decent job of capturing that spirit. You're basically trying to solve different online cases by using your internet browser and browsing the internet in the early 90s. I think it looks pretty interesting. I don't know if I'm going to end up playing this game. Maybe I'll pick it up when it comes out on a sale, but it does come out on August 27th, and there is a demo available today, so maybe I'll check out that demo to sort of get a taste and feel for this game, because I do think it has potential. Next up was a game called Spiritfarer, which I thought looked kind of interesting, but it's not a game I'm going to play either. It's basically a resource management game in which you are building up a boat and you're bringing spirits across the world to find their final resting place in the afterlife. You could do a lot of different things, customize your boat, so if you're a fan of things like Animal Crossing or Stardew Valley, you'll probably enjoy this style of game. Spiritfarer will be coming out today on the Nintendo Switch, which is kind of a theme that you're going to be seeing throughout this video, because a lot of games are surprisingly coming out today for the Switch. Next up was a game called Garden Story, in which once again you're doing resource management, rebuilding a community, but you're playing as a grape. There is some combat in the game. Playing as a grape is kind of interesting. I hope he doesn't stay out too long in the sun or anything like that, because then he'll become a raisin. I'll be forced to eat this raisin, and then it'll probably upset my stomach. Interesting game, but probably something I'm not going to play. Subnautica is coming to the Nintendo Switch, and this is a game that I'm actually pretty interested in checking out. It's a first-person perspective game in which you explore underwater, and I like games like this. I was a big fan of the Endless Ocean series on the Nintendo Wii. I think the ocean and the sea and stuff like that is just very interesting to explore, and I think this game looks really, really cool. Alongside of Subnautica, Subnautica Below Zero will also be coming to the Nintendo Switch, which is another version of Subnautica, but this takes place within a frozen environment and very cold environment, so there's sort of different things going on with this. Now, both of these games will be coming out in 2021 to the Nintendo Switch. They're pretty graphically intensive games, so I'm interested to see how the Nintendo Switch versions of these games turn out, but definitely something I'll keep my eye on. Next up was a game called Takeshi and Hiroshi, which is a weird game, but Next up was a game called Takeshi and Hiroshi, which comes out today on your Nintendo Switch. It's a game creation game in which you're creating an action RPG for your little brother to play, but you don't want the game to end up being too hard because then he'll get frustrated with it. I don't know, it's kind of an interesting concept. I like games like this that sort of think outside of the box, and you know, I think this has potential. I think the combat in the game looks pretty interesting, and creating your own sort of game, putting your own sort of enemies and monsters in place at different time frames while trying to keep a standard level of difficulty so that your little brother doesn't throw his Nintendo Switch across the room. I think that's kind of interesting. Like I said, Takeshi and Hiroshi comes out later today on the Nintendo Switch. Maybe I'll check it out. But this next game that comes out today is definitely a game I'm buying on the Nintendo Switch. And that is a game called Raji, an ancient epic. And really, this game looks dope as hell. It essentially takes place in ancient India, and it takes inspiration from various Hindu mythology. And it's an action-adventure game that kind of gives me a little bit of old school God of War vibes. There's some really cool set pieces, some really interesting interesting looking enemies, evidently some big boss battles as well. They tease like this big snake boss battle, and I think the combat looks really good. There's all sorts of weapon upgrades that you could do as well, and like I said, this game actually comes out today on the Nintendo Switch, and this is a game that I will be picking up and checking out because I think it has a lot of potential. It looks really cool, it looks like a really polished game, and it's definitely something I'm looking forward to playing. Next up was a game called Bear and Breakfast, in which you play as a bear and you're essentially turning a crappy shack into a swanky Airbnb to get customers in. And honestly, this kind of reminds me a bit of Theme Park, and I am a fan of Theme Park, you know, trying to attract customers, bring in your customers, and then the customers sort of give you feedback on your environment that you've created. So I'm actually kind of into this game. I'm actually kind of looking forward to this game. This game will be coming out on the Nintendo Switch in 2021, and I'll probably end up checking out this game because it gives me some theme park vibes, and that's a good thing. Next up was a game called A Short Hike, which is once again another game that I'm very interested in. It has sort of a PS1 cel-shaded art style to it, and I think it looks really smooth. I think the PS1 era of 3D games is something that companies should revisit, even though they haven't aged all that well. I do feel like there's some sort of nostalgia in it. Now, I'm not really sure what you do in this game, but I do like the way it looks and it sort of plays, so I'm definitely going to be checking out this game. And this game also comes out on the Nintendo Switch today, so I guess I'm buying a lot of stuff on my Nintendo Switch. Next up, we learned about a game called Card Shark, in which a shady Frenchman started talking to me and is trying to rip me off with cards. I don't really trust this man, you know, he looks like a swindler, but I do like the premise of this game because I like card tricks. I think they're actually pretty cool. Sort of sleight of hand stuff is very interesting to me, and the whole game is essentially you playing cards with people and trying to rip them off without getting caught because they'll shoot you if you get caught. I do like the premise of it. This game is coming out in 2021, and I will be checking it out whenever it does. Just to keep the shady Frenchman away from me, please. Please! Unless he's bringing me like a nice French baguette. Torchlight 3 has been confirmed to be coming to the Nintendo Switch, and I remember Dreamcast Guy did a video on Torchlight 3. He didn't really seem to like it, but maybe it's better now. Maybe they've added in some things and fleshed out the game and made it more like a console experience. I did like Torchlight 2 on the Nintendo Switch, so we'll see about this game. Once again, it's another Diablo-style game. I'm kind of over the genre, but it does look very highly stylized. I do like the graphics in the game. I think it was one of the better looking games during this Nintendo Indie World presentation, so I might end up checking this game out. Then we learned about a game called Manifold Garden, which looked like a crazy acid trip, and I'm really not about that. It's some sort of puzzle game. Just the visual style of the game is not for me, but maybe it's for you, and it comes out today on your Nintendo Switch. So yeah, Manifold Garden, if you're liking that sort of style of game, you might want to check it out. Next up was a game called Evergate, which at first I thought was like a Hollow Knight Ori game, but it's not, but it sort of is. It looks really interesting though. It's a 2D puzzle platformer in which you control a spirit in the afterlife, and I think the game has a great visual style, but the gameplay seems to be sort of the cool attraction to this game, as you have the ability to sort of slow down time to do platforming and solve various puzzles. Now this game actually comes out on the Nintendo Switch today as well. I might end up picking it up. I'm not quite sure on the price of it, but I think if it's priced fairly, I will end up checking this out because I haven't really played a puzzle platformer in quite a while, and I think this game just sort of oozes style, and that's a very good thing. Then we got a sizzle reel of a bunch of various indie games coming out on the Nintendo Switch at various points in times. There was a game called Haven, which looked kind of weird. Going Under, which I didn't really have any sort of clue. It looked like a pillow fighting simulator or something. The Red Lantern actually got an update, which is a game that I've sort of been wondering about. We learned about this game at a previous Indie World presentation, and I thought it was a really cool looking game. It's still pegged for an autumn 2020 release date, and I want that game. There was a game called Struggling, which looked really weird. Just a variety of different games that will be coming to the Nintendo Switch. And the final thing in this was Untitled Goose Game ending the show and getting a free 2-player update coming in September, which that's going to be just absolutely fantastic. 2 geese running around causing havoc and stuff. I really feel like it transforms the whole game because instead of just focusing on your one goose, now you have to focus on 2 geese running around and causing havoc. And I think that's really going to open up some doors of opportunity and really just create a very chaotic seen. They didn't say if this was going to be just local co-op or online co-op. I do hope it does have online co-op because I think that would be really fun, even though it is a smaller indie game, so it'll probably only be local. But still, this is going to be a very fun addition to the game, and it's a free addition to the game as well, which is definitely very awesome. That'll be coming out in September for the Nintendo Switch alongside of the physical version. Overall though, I thought this was a really good presentation. There was a great variety of games on display here, from smaller projects to larger projects, action adventure games, RPG games, first person perspective games, of course your roguelike dungeon crawler games as well, but just a good variety of stuff here from a variety of studios, and really just games that I'm not familiar with. I had never heard of a Short Hike or Raji, but now I'm buying these games today because they really impressed me during this presentation. And I think that's the most important thing here, is learning about new games and finding games that you want to play. So overall, I enjoyed this Indie World presentation. Of course, there is the fact that a Nintendo Direct more than likely is coming very soon, since the Nintendo Direct always follows up an Indie World presentation, so you're going to be getting more games for your Nintendo Switch. So let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of this Indie World presentation. Was it a good presentation for you? Are you going to be picking up any of the games that are coming out on the Switch today, or did you just not like this presentation at all and you hate indie games? And then I have to wonder, well, why did you watch the presentation and why did you watch this video? Because it's kind of sadistic, don't you think? Don't you think? And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Be sure to check out other videos on the channel as well. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Later.